Today we're here with mixed media composer Evan Hodges. He's composed for narrative films, documentaries, video games, and a PBS documentary called My Dear Children. He's going to talk to us today about composing for independent film. Here we go. So today we have Evan Hodges with us. Thank you so much, Evan, for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
So we actually met, you said that you just got back from a festival, and we actually met at a festival. We met here at the Nashville Film Festival a couple of years ago.
That is, you are correct. Yeah.
Do you get out to festivals a lot?
I do. Like you mentioned, I just got back from one. They're kind of the bread and butter of my business. It's really important to connect with people. And I think that film festivals are a great way to do that. You can kind of see where the industry is going, and you can also, connect with people on a in person, one-on-one type of thing. And it's one thing to just email people out of the blue or say, I saw your film, but to actually like vibe with them and hang, and talk about like your favorite cereal as a kid. Like it's just another level of, connection. And so,
yeah.
I love going to festivals. It's obviously expensive to go to festivals. So I can't go to every single one, but I do my best. Actually wasn't at Nashville Film Festival. I didn't have a film there. I just saw that Michael Dana, an Oscar-winning composer, was there. And so I literally just went to go meet Michael Dana because it's not very often that you meet a Oscar-winning composer, and that's where awesome. We met, actually. So yeah,
take us really quickly through your metamorphosis. I mean, how did you get here? How did you end up being a composer for films?
Yeah, I was a musician before. I still am, but not to the extent that I was. I was a jazz musician, and actually have a jazz degree, which is a useless point, but it's fun for this conversation.
I have a theater degree. It's the same.
Exactly. So you got bit by the useless degree bug too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I was a jazz musician, and I ended up injuring my arm, and I always to where actually I couldn't play. I played acoustic bass, and in that moment I was like, I needed to find some kind of creative outlet, and I always loved film. Film and music were kind of like my two favorite things, as a kid and as a young adult and as an adult. So I was like, I'm just going to do film scoring. And I had I'd never used computer music, but like a computer for music. I was like very much a jazz purist. I didn't play with an amplifier and very old school. So it was like technology and different types of medium all together. So it was kind of just a head first type of thing. I haven't looked back. It's been an amazing journey. Yeah.
So what was, because I know you've done like tons of short films. What was the first feature film that you did?
Oh, Lord. It was the first. Well, I did a feature film. It was not good. But the first like real feature film I did was with a colleague of mine that I met through the scene in Atlanta. I did an ATL, like the 24-hour film festival thing, and I scored I did like a spaghetti western. And I did like Hose and Ha. It was chef's kiss. It was so good. But I met two filmmakers from there, and then they introduced me to this other filmmaker. And he's a colleague that I still work with. And that was kind of like it was an indie horror, kind of like creature in the woods type of thing, the Dime a Dozen film. But it was my first like actual, longer form type of score. And I just remember really enjoying the process, but also being really overwhelmed because it was a lot. Your first one is the first one is you always remember, so so that was my first, I guess you could say, project in the longer form narrative.
You said you enjoyed the process. Tell me about that process. What parts of it did you enjoy?
Yeah, the no sleep. Besides cocaine? No, I'm joking. This is being recorded.
Film is cocaine.
Exactly. Proverbial. I don't know. I think the collaborative nature of the process is amazing to me. You know, I love working with like-minded individuals, and I like to learn a lot. So every project I work on, it ends up being like my best work because I've learned something on that way that I didn't know before. And so I really enjoy growing as a creative. And then the other side of the coin of it too is that I love I guess like the Lewis and Clark style nature of exploration, you know, like not having an idea, but then at the same time, really just kind of going for it. And, you know, you start with literally nothing you have a blank canvas. And at the very end, you have this really cool thing that you created, you know, and you, like I say, you sometimes have an idea of where it's going to be, but 9 times out of 10, it takes a complete left turn. And, I enjoy those, the getting in the weeds and kind of working with people and figuring it out. So
yeah, what I really love about not only film but just writing in general is just that you are faced with something that doesn't have right answers. You just have to kind of feel your way through it and discover things, and figure out what is true to you about this piece.
And then there's also the question of should this film be made? That's the first question. You know, has this been done better and you know, like more succinct?
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So how? Because you mentioned, you know, you were a jazz musician. How are the things different from being like just a musician or a songwriter and actually composing for film?
Yeah, great question. I think people assume that musicians can compose, and that is the case sometimes, but most of the time it's not. And I can typically tell when someone doesn't have the understanding of like understanding beats and understanding transition points in film and tone and mood and story and like serving the story. But I think for me it's transitioning from playing jazz music to being a film composer. It was very much a smooth transition because jazz is based upon interplay, right? Like working with people, improvising on the spot. The misnomer is that everything is improvised. Obviously, like people have different ideas and things that they've practiced on their own and they come together, but through those ideas, new ideas can spring forward. And so a lot of it's just kind of creative ideas, you know, and coming with an idea in real time with jazz music and kind of expounding upon it in real time. And there's a lot of exploration, you know, and pushing the boundaries, while also like at the same time trying to fit inside the tradition of the medium of the music, right? The vehicle of jazz. Right. And so like to push that against like film, it's the same thing, right? Where instead of a song, it's a story and it's a narrative, right? And so like all these different people are different like rhythm sections in the band. So you have like the DP, or you have like the actor, or you have the location in general, you know, you have the script, you have all these different types of things, and they all serve a purpose. And so it was very kind of similar, you know what I mean, in regards to like that approach. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. I know it's like very kind of like thespian and like very like free flowing, but there's a lot of correlation. So
yeah, absolutely. So you said that not a whole, just because somebody's a musician doesn't necessarily mean that they can be a composer. Dive down that rabbit hole for us. What do you think is the difference with somebody who's just a musician and somebody who's
yeah. I think everyone can be, you know, but I think it requires a level of study and understanding. Like, just because you can write music doesn't mean you can or should write music for film. I think it's really important to study, to watch a lot of films and to actually study story and see how the music, you know, interplays with the film. And when I say like people who shouldn't do it, that was kind of maybe a hard stance, but I think that there's a level of maturity that comes with actually studying the art form, and understanding that while music is a vital and pivotal piece in film, it's not a music video. Like it's not there to serve your music. You're there to serve the film, you know? And so I feel like a lot of people who want to say that, oh, I have a friend who plays music and they score it. It sounds like the friend who's trying to figure stuff out, which is cool, but it's like overscored, or the tone doesn't really quite match the emotion. Typically it's the combination of both. So yeah, it's very subtle, you know. I mean, you can convey so many emotions with one note, or with, you know, like a cluster of sounds, or with complete silence, you know.
Yeah, I think it's new composers especially need to understand just how much what they compose can change what you're seeing. So it really is serving a purpose more than just the music. Because you can really be seeing a different movie if the music is different. So the composer really needs to be cognizant of that effect that it's going to have on what people see, how people see it.
Yeah, for sure.
The kind of the whole purpose of this is talking about independent film and just letting people know who maybe haven't shot an indie film, or about to shoot an indie film, or shot a couple of indie films. Just letting them know what the process is like working with a composer for the first time, or maybe just for the first time on a lengthier project. So when a director first approaches you with this idea of you composing for their film, what is it that you're looking from them? What do you need from them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I get asked this a lot by different people. I think the first thing is, what is the goal of your film? Like, what is the story of your film? And, you know, are we a good match, you know, to work together? I think the first thing that I always like to do is talk about like comps. Like, what is this kind of like? What's the tone and feel? And then from there, we kind of talk about the story. And I approach composition through very much kind of like a painter. So I talk about like, what are the colors or the moods that you're kind of wanting? And so when they tell me the comp, oh, it's like this movie. And, you know, like they give me, there's like a temp track. We watch the film, like a rough cut of it, or, you know, they give me like a playlist of like music that they like or inspired by. And so from there, I can kind of discern like, okay, this is the direction they want to go because these are the commonalities with the instrumentation and the orchestration, or the mood and the tone. And then from there, we kind of discuss like, okay, so this is what I'm noticing from our conversation, kind of looking through the stuff. And is this right? And this, so like once we can kind of agree on the tone, from there, it's kind of like the same thing when you're like talking with your DP, you know, you're like, okay, well, I want to use this lens or this thing. It's the same thing. It's like, okay, I want to use these instruments and I want to do this orchestration or these kind of ideas. And from there, it's just kind of sussing out the feel. And once you've really established that, the tone, unless it's like all over the place, which I've had films like that before that are a little tricky, because they don't feel succinct, you know, as a film. But once you kind of have those guardrails set up, it's pretty kind of just lightning in a bottle, catch it as fast as you can, record, you know, and just go. So that's kind of the main thing, is just kind of establishing the tone and the world that you want your music to be. So
does it help you or hinder you, like if a director has a temp music track? Because I as an editor, I find it hard to edit the visual without the music. So I'll which a lot of editors do. They'll just pull music from other comps and put that under there as kind of a temp music score. So do you prefer directors give you that? Have you had directors give you that before? And does that just hinder the whole process because you want to start from a blank slate?
Yeah. I mean, I typically have films with temp. Sometimes I have films that I've been hired to rescore because the composer didn't like hit the right beats that they were wanting. And so I kind of have a, like, do not do this. If it's a rescore thing, it's like, okay, I'm not going to use this thing. Thank you, previous composer. I appreciate you taking a bullet for me. But typically, I do. There's a love-hate relationship with temp tracks. I'd say that 9 times out of 10, people are understanding of the role of a temp track, and they are okay with letting it go. And typically, because they're hiring me because they value what I want to bring to the table, and so it's more or less just kind of like it's like a, I guess the good analogy is like, do you remember back in the day before we had phones and you had like, you printed out directions like MapQuest? Do you remember that? It's kind of like that, where it's like, these are our directions, right? And so, but like half the fun comes from like having directions, but then kind of taking a detour and going to see something completely else. So if the director has that free nature with the music, it's helpful to establish the direction, but the way you get there is up for interpretation. I do find that most temp love things that I have are with commercial music, like for like a TV spot or like an ad or something like that. That's always just like, we want it just like this, but we don't have $200,000 for this Coldplay song. Just like, okay, cool. So you want these 4 chords and you want this 4 on the floor drum sound, and okay, cool. Close as I can without being copyright and strict. But no, I have encountered a couple times in narrative work, but it's typically people are pretty open to being open with it.
So, kind of on that same vein, I realize budgets kind of dictate this, but if you were to have your best case scenario, how early would you want a director to bring you onto the project?
Yeah, great question. It depends on the director. So I have that director that I did that first feature with, that I mentioned earlier. I scored a film off of a script. He had already written the film and was kind of editing it, and then he ended up throwing my music in and editing the rest to my score. So he used my score as a temp track, and that's not uncommon. I know lots of colleagues who do that, and I still do that to this day. It just depends. It has to be the right relationship, though, because there's a level of trust and understanding beats that you have to establish. It's not something that you can just do right out the gate. But typically I'd like to be involved as soon as possible, if possible, if the budget dictates it, or will allow it. But yeah, I think most of the time I'm brought on in post after they've kind of worked it out, or they'll reach out to me in pre-pro and say, hey, like I have a colleague right now that I reached out to, that I met at FilmQuest, I think 2 years ago, or maybe last year. And he was telling me about this film that he's working on. And, yeah, it's a really cool concept. And so I just like kind of put together a little playlist, and he's like really vibing with the vibe that I sent him. And so I think he's kind of establishing some of the sounds or some of his shots off of kind of some of the tones that I sent him. And obviously I'll go in and score on the back end, because that's kind of what we decided we were going to do for this project. But yeah, it's kind of a case-by-case basis. But typically it's great to have at least some type of conversation with a composer in pre-pro, even if you can't bring them on.
Yeah, I bet, because I can only imagine kind of when I shot Zero Sum Game, I already kind of had a feel for what I thought it should sound like. And that in some ways changed the way I was shooting it. So I can see where talking to a composer and kind of discussing what you want that whole world to sound like can definitely affect how you shoot it and the timing of your edit and all of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the same thing when you're planning like where you're going to put your lights, right? When you're lighting the scene, it's the same thing. It's like the music is a tone, it's a color. So, having some kind of idea, even if it's like super meta, like giving it to the actor so they can hear what they're acting over. I know that I watched like a BTS video with Bateman when he did the Ozark show. That he did that. Like he would like kind of give the actors like, this is the music that's going to kind of be over this section, or the tone that we're kind of going for. And that really helped establish kind of like their direction on their acting, And so it's like they're reacting to another element of the film that they're not like supposed to know.
Yeah, but that's a great idea. What a great idea.
Yeah, and I've done that with a couple of directors too as well. But it, like I said, it's a little more involved, and it's not as simple as just like, here's your sandwich, makeup, lights, camera, go, sound. It's a little more involved, so I know it doesn't work for everybody, but it's a cool.
But the thing is, like, I know I've worked with a lot of actors that already kind of do that for themselves. They'll like have headsets on with music that kind of motivates them for that scene. And so this is kind of in that same vein of putting the actor into that frame of mind of what this is going to look like, because it's often hard for an actor. I used to act as well. It's hard to imagine what is being seen from the other side of the camera and what it's all supposed to feel like.
Yeah. No, thank you. I'll just sit in my chair in my dark room and write
with my headphones
music.
and my head down.
Exactly. Write moody music and drink some coffee. So, yeah.
So kind of in following up on that, bringing in a composer early or just having them in post, I know there can be a huge range for a composer and what they charge and the services that go with those charges. So kind of, you don't have to tell me what you charge, but take me through that kind of process of your thinking of why you would jump in different charges depending upon who's involved and what you need to do. Tell me about that involvement and how that scale kind of works.
Sure. So first things first is when we've established kind of the world we want the music to be in, the instrumentation, right? I record a lot of sounds. I have a lot of different instruments. I play a lot of different instruments. I played a trumpet on a short film last year. And I used to play French horn in middle school and high school, and flugelhorn in marching band. So I remember
French horn is my favorite horn.
Yeah, exactly. But I remembered the fingerings. So, and I borrowed a trumpet from a colleague. And so like my embouchure was shot by the end of it, but I made it work. But so I was able to do that myself, because the budget was so small. And I was just like, I really want a trumpet texture because it's really cool. And it's something that's very unique to the score, and really up the production value. But I knew that the filmmaker didn't have the budget for me to hire someone. So I kind of just did that on my own. But sorry, random tangent. But yeah, typically we kind of discuss what we want the tone to be. If it's orchestral, it's really great to have a couple musicians to record, because it really does lift the quality of the production. I mean, you can make some virtual instruments sound real, but there is a level of fakeness in there too, though. You can't quite get it out, and typically like the best way around that is to have like a couple musicians and then put some fake instruments underneath them to thicken it up, but it sounds real.
So can you give me an example of how you've done that? You already mentioned trumpets.
Yeah.
So what did you add the trumpet to? What were the other virtual instruments that you had going on?
Well, that's not an example. So that one was like,
okay.
That was like really heavy guitars and synthesizers, and that was kind of a niche example. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, but so I'm trying to think. For example, yeah, I did a comp for a project recently, and I hired a cellist out of Austria that a colleague of mine works with, and I had like strings underneath that, and she was kind of like the focal point. So it really just kind of really helped to give it a human element,
Mm-hmm.
And it just really kind of pushes the emotion forward. But typically, to go back to your question, once we decide like these are the instruments we want to use, if there's a budget, I try to at least hire a couple musicians, and typically I kind of have an idea of how long it'll take to record their parts. And most people that I work with are remote, so they have their own. Most musicians I know have their own space, so they just record, and they just send me the stems, and then I do all the work on my end. There is some work in preparing it, so I have to like make the music. Like I have to write the music out for them to read it, and then I have to like prepare the music for them to be able to record to it, and then I have to go in and clean it up, and so there's a lot of like tedious things, and so those types of things kind of go into adding to a budget. So if you have musicians, you know, you have to have a fee for them. I typically try to pay around $150 to $250 an hour for them. And so typically, I mean, on average, it's around 2 hours, give or take. An extreme is I did this one, it was a slow burn coming of age feature. It was about two hours or so, or about that. And the directors really loved, speaking of Michael Dana, they loved the Sweet Hereafter score. And so I checked out the score, and that had an instrument called a gemshorn, which is like a medieval instrument. And so I reached out to my colleague who plays a lot of woodwind instruments. Her name's Veronica Vitiskova. She's currently on tour with Hans Zimmer. She's an amazing woodwind player, like amazing. I've used her on so many different projects. But she played the shofar for the film that I'm currently on, that I'm on the festival circuit with right now, which is like an Israeli instrument made out of a ram's horn. I think I had 50 minutes of music, and I think it ended up taking her 12 hours to record.
Wow.
It was a lot, because she played the gemshorn, and she played flute and bass flute. And so it was a lot of, that took me like a week to do all of the preparation and getting all the music right and getting all the stuff ready for her. And let's just say the filmmaker got a great deal, because I budgeted quite under that amount. And so my business just ended up absorbing the cost. But I think the end result far outweighed the cost, you know, because it was like, not only was I able to provide like, you know, money for her and to help her career, she gave me like music that was extremely beautiful and emotional, and it was worth the sticker price. So yeah, long-winded answer to, if you do everything in the box yourself, or if you know a composer who has a lot of skill sets in regards to like recording different things, typically they can do most of it themselves. If you want to have traditional orchestration, or if you want to have a niche instrument like electric guitar for like metal, or, you know, like heavy drums, or any of these types of things, right? You'll have to outsource that if you can't do it. And that does cost. The cost is broken down into paying for the musician, potentially paying for the recording space if they have to do a remote recording space, and then like the preparation of the music, so getting it ready, and then the backside of it, getting it all in and cleaning it up. So,
and also if you're even talking about a bigger budget, I'd imagine, you know, if you're using a couple of musicians, like if you obviously want more musicians, like you want a whole quartet or something, or a choir, you're going to have to pay for that as well as studio space. And
a lot of my colleagues have had. I typically work with smaller groups, you know, of people, because the type of music that I write kind of lends more to that, as opposed to like big orchestral types of things. That's just not really the music that I really write. But I know a lot of my colleagues work with orchestras overseas because of the conversion rate, and because they're able to just blaze through it really fast, and they kind of have the facility. So typically all that quote unquote work of preparing the parts, typically a composer will hire someone called an orchestrator. So what you do is you kind of give them the music, you know, the session file, and they prepare all the music. So they go into the MIDI data, and then they say, okay, well, these are the notes, and then they chart it out for them. So that's like one step removed. But those types of things, obviously that's an extra, it's like, you know, hiring a second camera operator type of thing.
Right.
You know, it's like, it helps, but
it escalates really quickly.
Exactly.
So what is the thing that you think, director, producer hires you, what is the thing you think they most often do wrong with music in a film? I guess I'm not only meaning for you as a composer, but just what do you think first-time filmmakers or indie filmmakers often get wrong about putting those two elements together, like getting music and making a film? What do you want them to see about how those two things should conjoin from your standpoint as a musician and a composer?
Yeah, this is a spirited conversation that I've had with several directors. Ones that I'm really close with, I'm very direct. And it comes down to, I would say, less seasoned directors, they didn't quite get the shot that they were wanting, or they didn't get quite the performance that they were wanting out of their actor. And so they lean heavily on, okay, well, we're going to have the music convey that emotion, right? And I've had not fist arguments, but very spirited arguments with people that I really, have good relationships with, where they're like, we need to have music here. And I'm like, well, you should have shot it better, because there doesn't need to be music here. It's not conveyed well because it wasn't directed well. And so, there's the whole kind of like give and take of, with indie people, with like more, I guess, people who are not as experienced, they rely heavily on music to really help lift that, kind of like J.J. Abrams, or uses lens flares.
Right.
He hasn't returned my calls. I wonder why.
I'll tell you. I'll give a little tip to directors right now. What I usually end up doing in the edit, if I absolutely did not get the performance I wanted, instead of using music, which I think you're right, that is the wrong crutch to use. I find their actual most subdued take. And then maybe use the context of the scene to let that emotion carry. Because often if you're dealing, in indie film, you deal with a lot of people who are new actors or haven't even acted at all. And so a tip is just to let the context of the scene carry that emotion, not their acting, and just take their most subdued takes. And then when you do that, if you take a really subdued take on something, then the music really does help convey that emotion. But if the actor's got like just the totally wrong emotion and they're really strong, putting a strong music piece with they're just going to conflict.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, I don't know. So my dad always told me that's like, he always said like, it's like salt, less is more.
Yeah.
So I'm always watching even my own work and being like, did I really need music here? I could have like done less, and there was a great interview and it made me feel really validated. But there's this interview where, so first off, let me just tell the interview and I'll say what I do. So there's an interview with John Williams. I'm sure everyone knows who John Williams is who watches this. If they don't, then they should probably reassess their career choices. But John Williams is a very prolific film composer, and he was giving a metaphor of, he approaches composition like an ice sculptor. So there's this big block of ice, and he's constantly chiseling away, starting to try to find the shape that he's looking for. And he said, like, sometimes I'll have this idea and then I'll chisel it down away until it's only like 3 piano notes, or it's like complete silence, And when I watched, I was like, yes, because I've also told this other filmmakers too, where it's like, I approach it as a painter, like I view my DAW, my digital audio workstation, kind of like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut, right? It's where you throw all your stuff in and you build your ideas off of it. I just record. I just throw, like kind of Jackson Pollock, just throw stuff at it and see how it sticks. And then I just slowly start to cut away and find the thing that I'm looking for. And sometimes I'll like compose music that's like I'll spend 6 hours on a sound, just a sound, developing it, and then I end up muting it. Or I end up ducking it so low that it's felt and not heard, And so so that's kind of the process. But I think the main takeaway is that your music will not save your film, and it especially won't save that one scene that's troublesome. Typically, if you can't find the right tone with your composer, you should assess if there actually needs to be music, because 9 times out of 10 there doesn't need to be music. So
I think too, I'm actually editing a video right now for a company, and that video is about sound or the absence of sound in a film. And I think sometimes filmmakers miss the idea that the sounds of an environment are also a type of music.
correct. Yes.
Even if the only thing you hear is the air conditioning hum, or
that's called an indefinite pitch. By the way, I'll give you a music lesson.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know.
So you have things in music. You have something called a definite and indefinite pitch. So if you sing a note da, that's a definite pitch. An indefinite pitch would be like a sound of like like a drum, or a sound of like a squeak or something. But like the sound of like the lights in the ceiling, right, or the air conditioner or the fridge sound. Those are indefinite pitches, so they're non-tones, but because they create all these frequencies, they create drones, they create sounds. So I think that you're very correct. Sometimes just having room tone is music in a way,
Yeah.
Sorry to jump on you, but
No. I often, that's the way I edit. I edit to try to get everything right. Sometimes a scene I feel needs to be driven with music, and that's just kind of the feeling of it, like if somebody fights. But often I'll edit with the idea of, can I do this without anything other than the natural sound that would happen in that environment? And that's ends up being artificial too. You have to put in the traffic noise or whatever. But I think. I think we need to take into account that everything you hear is part of that sound composition, not just the music, but the stuff that's non-musical. What did you call it? Indefinite tone?
indefinite pitch.
Indefinite pitch. So what is, take me just really briefly, what is your process? So if somebody comes to you and they say, I have such and such a budget, and I've got a film with a locked cut. Here's the film, here's my concept. What is that process from that initial meeting to when you finally deliver that final piece?
The old soup to nuts, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Typically, we discuss the feel and the tone of the film. Then we discuss the budget, which everyone loves to discuss. And once we've established on a rate that's fair to them and fair to me, then I draw up a contract, and then I get to work. I'll score. Typically, in my contract, I have like 3 revisions per cue. I typically don't pull on that unless there's been one exception where I had a client from hell that just was impossible, and so I learned to put that in there because some people are just never satisfied. But typically I have like 3 rewrites, and so if it's a feature or if it's a short, I'll do like a pass, and then I'll send it to them, and then we'll watch it and talk. And then if there are notes, I'll go back and do another pass. Feature films, I approach it in chunks. So I typically break them into 4. So I'll just have a reel 1, reel 2, reel 3, reel 4, right? So that way I'm not changing anything on my timeline that could affect something else. And it's easier to digest because it's so much more music. And so I kind of have, what I have is a kind of a working document, kind of like, Frame.io, where you have like the notes and stuff. I'll have that kind of document where I have the cues, and then I have like, is it approved? Is it not approved? Need notes. And then from there, we just kind of check down the list. And once it's done, I just, kind of render out a mastered version, and then send it over to them, and then take a long nap.
When we talked about we talked a little bit about what we feel music adds or doesn't add to the whole film. But what you mentioned a little bit about being minimalist. What are you trying to make sure the music does for that scene? When you see the scene, what is that mindset of a composer?
I think it's more or less deciding, like I said, does it need the music, and
But if it doesn't need music, why doesn't it need music?
tough to say. I think tension, probably. I think silence is a very painful thing. For example, if you have a hard conversation with a colleague, right, and you say something really hard for them, the biggest tension point is the moment you finish your dialogue. This is not a script. The moment you finish what you said, right, to them responding in real time, that space between your end of your sentence and the beginning of theirs, that's tension, right? And so the same thing on screen, it's even more heightened because you have, maybe you have a push in, or you have like the way it's lit, or you have a lower third, the way in which you have it shot and the composition of the shot. All those things add to that tension. And so it's like noise, it's like if I'm trying to convey this emotion that's already being conveyed well, I'm just getting in the way, and so it's just more or less like, does it need it because there's already enough like emotional data in front of you? Do you know what I mean? Because it's just if it's too much, then it's like overwhelming, and then you just kind of lost in the sauce. So I think
audience can already feel it.
Yeah. So I think it's really good to really lean into that silence, depending upon the genre and the type of film. But it really does help. I feel like it helps accentuate the drama of the scene, if it's a horror or if it's a comedy or whatever. I find, especially comedies, it's all about like setting up the joke, just like building to this moment and then having that breath for the punchline. And if you're just scoring over it, then that punchline loses some of its like oomph.
I think there's a good example. I don't know if you ever saw the movie. I think it's A Ghost Story. Did you ever see that?
I know of it. I haven't seen it, but I know of it.
There's a scene where this girl is sitting in her kitchen after something tragic has just happened. And she's sitting on the floor of her kitchen eating. She's got an entire pie dish in front of her, and she's just eating that pie on the floor. And all you hear is her fork hitting the pie tin and the sound of her breathing, like so almost like she's gasping. And the shot holds for a long time on that. But without that silence, like a music would ruin that shot. Because you really need to be sitting in that room with her. And that gets uncomfortable sitting in there with her. And I think the best music, what it does is when the intention of the scene, almost not that it's lifting up, it's complementing. Like an outfit might, I don't know how to, like a cool uniform might complement a football player, but the uniform isn't doing the job.
For sure.
It's side by side with whatever is happening on the screen. It doesn't necessarily have to lift the scene. It's just there to accompany it, to be a partner in that scene.
I saw another example. I saw Dune 2, which, Hans scored that. There's this whole there's this kind of long montage sequence of events, and there's like music over all of it, and it's just like a lot of music. It's fire, but it's a lot of music. And then we cut to Atreides, right? the young Atreides, and he's doing sword fencing with Josh Brolin's character, and you would assume that there would be music over this moment, right? Because it's like an intense moment of them sword fighting, or whatever, and there's no music, and it was like perfect because it's the sound of them the quarrel. That's the word. The quarrel of the characters fighting had that intensity, you know. And I think there was so much musical content thrown at us while we were watching it, right? There's just like this big grandiose world, and to have something so big and so epic and then push into a really small scene with just two people, and the lack of music really accentuated that scene. And it was like a long scene of them quarreling and discussing and dialogue and no music, and I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah,
great spotting scene. Yeah,
right. That contrast of just a lot of music, and then you get a really quiet moment. Yeah, like this is just about that. So what do you think is one of your favorite moments from one of the scores that you did? Which one just really stands out to you as something you're proud of?
Yeah. Man, it's like picking my favorite child. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like I mentioned, like my favorite projects are the ones that I've just finished because I feel like they're my best work, you know. And a year from now, those will probably be my favorite projects. Probably, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I'm currently on the circuit with a couple of films. One is a pretty gnarly film. It's about a possessed dreidel. And I ended up, like I mentioned, hiring a colleague of mine to play the shofar and another instrument called the pipes of Moses, which is a traditional Israeli instruments. And it's got that alongside like synthesizers and like fretless bass and like distorted guitar and heavy vocals. But that score is really, really special. And it really complements the visuals and the world. I think there's this one scene where these two characters have been captured by this demon and they're inside this dreidel, and the grandfather asks the granddaughter to sing this traditional blessing, and there's this camera shot, and they're like it's kind of like a wraparound, and they're singing. And originally the director and I didn't want to have music at all. We just wanted them just the a cappella of them singing. But I ended up going in and orchestrating music using the instruments that I'd kind of developed for the score, the more emotional, intimate, softer tones, not the heavy guitars and stuff. But I ended up like making a score that accompanied them. And it really just helped lift that scene. And that scene through to the very end is literally just like a rubber band being slowly pulled. And that was kind of like the start of the emotional beat. And I think it was strong before the music was there, but once the music was added, it really lifted the scene. And I think that probably was one of my most favorite moments, I would say, in this past year or so in my compositions.
Sort of in encapsulating everything we've talked about, because this is mostly for directors and producers of independent film trying to learn more about how to finish their projects. To close us out and to kind of give a piece of advice to somebody who's trying to finish a first film, what is that advice to that director when it comes to a composer? What can you tell them about the music?
I would say have a game plan as to what you want the music to be. Being very vague and saying, "Oh, I just want you to have this," is not helpful. I scored a film a couple years ago, and the director gave me Aphex Twin as a reference. I don't know if you know what Aphex Twin is. I love Aphex Twin. He's an electronic composer, or just musician. He created IDM, intellectual dance music. He was creating music that people are now creating. Like he did it with like nothing. He's a freak. He's amazing. But I wrote that music, and then they were like, actually, no, I want this instead. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I rewrote something else. And then he was like, no, it's not quite right. And so I just ended up giving him the stems and letting him, kind of figure out the route that he wanted to go. And he ended up finding something that he enjoyed, which is cool. But I think there was a lot of back and forth that could have been easily avoided had they had a understanding of what they wanted tonally, Yeah. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. So establish the tone you want and make sure to find a composer who can execute that the way you want it. And and also be open to exploration and trying things out that you may not have thought could work, because you could be surprised. So
you said you're on the circuit now. Can you mention the film that you're on?
I'm
film festivals for right now.
Yeah, I'm on the two films I'm currently on the circuit with. First one is Gimme, which is the the best dreidel. The other one is a film called Grunge, which is a great film as well. It's like a 90s kind of throwback film. That's the one that I played the trumpet on. Those are two great filmmakers. Rene Rivas did Grunge, and Stephen Schloss did Gimme. And I'm currently working on a feature two features right now, and a couple shorts that hopefully will start up soon. But that's all for now. Wow, it sounded like that's all for now, folks. But no, I always have things going on. So yeah, always try to be on the circuit as much as I can.
So tell us how people can get a hold of you. How people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, for sure. You can find me on Instagram, Evan Hodges Composer. I score pretty much every day on there, so you can kind of see my process, a little behind the scenes action. And then if you want to go on my website, I have different types of examples of my music and kind of behind the scenes videos, all sorts of stuff. And that's just my name, evanhodges.com.
Evan, thank you so much for spending some time with us. This is really helpful.
Yeah, man.
I'm sure everybody got a lot out of it. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, man. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.